Good night, everyone. Tonight, God is good and God is good all the time. My name is Simon J. Spiritual. I'm here to give you a word on tonight. We still doing Bible study and we add on the Ten Commandments. And it comes from Exodus chapter 20, verse 1 to 21. So now God spoke to all these words, to Moses and also for even though the Israelite was down there, they still were able to hear. So this the law that God was talking about. He wants to give to the Israelite before they possess their land. So the first one he said, I am the Lord, your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. So two, you should have no other God before him. So he telling the Israelites, these are the law that you have to preserve when you in the land that I'm giving you. You should have no other God before him. Three, you should not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven above or on the earth beneath or in the water below. So God telling them, when you're in your land, don't make no other image of a God. He the only God that He wants them to preserve. So four, you should not bow down, to them or worship them, for the Lord your God, I am a jealous God. Now see, God is letting them know. He letting them know He is a jealous God. Punishing the children for the sin of the parents to the third and the fourth generation of those who hate him. So God let them know. Don't make no image of no other God. Because he is a jealous God. He wants them to serve only him. The only one God he letting them know. So five, but showing love to 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commandment. Now he wants them to keep his commandment. To show love and keep his commandment. So now six, six, you should not misuse the name of the Lord your God. For the law will not hold anyone guiltiness, who misuse his name. Now God tell them, don't misuse my name. You gonna call my name, obey my commandment. So seven, remember the seventh day by keeping it holy. You remember after Pharaoh let them go for the 3 days to worship to the Lord. So God was telling them how the Sabbath day gonna be. 6 days. You gather all the food and you gather all your work what you're gonna do, and the seventh day, rest day. So on the eighth, on 6 days, 6 days you should labor and do all your work. See, on that sixth day, you should do everything you need to do. Clean your house, do whatever you have to do, cook for 2 days, you know, do a lot of labor in the yard. Whatever you have to do all that on that sixth day, because here go nine. But the seventh day, is a Sabbath to the Lord your God, or, on it you shall not do any work. Neither you nor your son, your daughter, everybody in the household, do not do any work. The seventh day is a rest day, God is telling them. You know, uh, Know your animals, anybody in the household. You should not be doing no work. On the sixth day, that when you do everything you need to do. So 10. For the 6 days the law had made, so God let them know, the reason why the 7 days holy. God said, I create this whole world. You know, for 6 days I create this whole world. And see, on that seventh day, God said, I rest. I worked so hard in 6 days, the seventh day I rest. He said he rests. And he made that seventh day holy. So he rests, he made it on the seventh day, and therefore he blessed the seventh day and he made it holy. So 11, he say his law. He say, honor your father and your mother, so that you may live a long life on that land, that the Lord, the God is giving you. Now He's telling you, for you to live a long and prosperous life in that land, you have to obey your mother, you have to obey your father. And we know that's in Ephesians chapter 6. Jesus has spoken on that also. Obey your mother and obey your father to live a long life on this land that I'm giving you. So 12, you should not murder. You know, you should not murder unless you're going to walk, if God instructs you to go to walk. So 13, you should not commit adultery. 14, you should not steal. 15, you should not give false testimony against your neighbor. 16, you should not convert your neighbor house, or you should not convert your neighbor wife, all his maid, all her female servants, all the oxen and donkeys, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. Anything belongs to your neighbor. You should not convert your neighbor. You should not give false testimony about your neighbor. You should not do that. You remember what God said? Love your neighbor. So 17, when the people saw the thunder, when they saw the lightning, they just started trembling. They started getting scared. They're trembling, there was fear, and they stood a distance. I don't blame you. Seen lightning, you seen everything going on, they stood a far distance, they told Moses. Now they had got so scared, so they told Moses, they told Moses, speak to us for yourself. Now they said, speak to us to yourself, Moses. That just how scared they got, and we will listen. And see, that's what God had wanted to do. See, God had tested them. God had tested them. He wanted to shake them up, because see, they were giving Moses a hard time. It was two reasons, for them to listen to Moses and obey Moses, and also God wanted to shake them up so they would not sin in that land that he is giving them. So they told Moses, speak to us yourself and we will listen, just like God had said they would. But do not. Now, Israelites said, do not, have God to speak to us, or we will die. Remember God told them, don't touch that mountain, or you will die, or I will shoot you with arrows and all this kind of stuff, and then they seeing lightness and everything. God hadn't scared them. God hadn't shook them up. So they said, oh, Moses, we only want you to speak to us. We don't want God to speak to us, or we're going to die. And that was all God planned. That was a test, for them to not to sin in that land, and also for them to listen and obey Moses. So now we see the Israelite was afraid of God. They was afraid of God. God don't want him. They don't want God to speak to them. Just how much they was afraid of God. And that was a test that God had given them. He had to shake them up a little bit before they go possess their land. For them to obey all his commandments. And also not sin and not, have an other image of God. So that was a way for them to obey his commandment, not sin, and also listen to Moses and obey Moses. So God don't want now we see that the Israelite was afraid of God. They don't want him to speak to them. Moses said, do not be afraid. God came to test you. Now Moses telling them, God came to test you. Do not be afraid. God came to test you, you all. So that the fear of God would be with you to keep you from sinning in that land. So that was a test. So that Moses telling them, don't be afraid. That was only a test. That was only a test for you to obey my commandment, and not sin that in that land that I'm about to give you. So the people, they were scared, and they remained. They were so scared, they remained a way distance from the mountain. They were a way distant. You remember, they saw fire, they saw thunders and lightning and stuff. God's voice was just so loud. So they were just so scared, and that was only a test. Only a test for them to obey God's law when they possessed their land. and for them to listen to Moses. Because he giving them all these instructions for them to obey in that land. So the people were scared, so they remained a distance while Moses approached them in thick darkness, where God was. So remember early on, God had told Moses, after I finished speaking with the Israelites, the community, they will listen to you. And we see they say, they say, Moses, you only can speak to us. We don't want God to speak to us, or we might die. And that was God's whole plan. So now we see the Israelite only want to speak with Moses and not with God because they were afraid they would die. So God's plan worked. It worked. God shook them off so much that they don't even want to speak to God. Most we are continue on speaking to you. Just only you speak to us, okay? We don't want to speak to God. We're gonna die. Because remember God said, if you touch that mountain, I'm gonna shoot you with arrows and all kind of stuff. So they were just shaking up. They thought God was gonna kill them. And it was only a test. So the Ten Commandments has set God's standards for our relationship with Him and with others. They are the spiritual and emotional centerpiece of the entire law. The whole law was for the Israelite. A law that includes religion, ceremony, as well as civil functioning in a civil law while containing many timeless principles for society to apply, specific to the nation of the Israelite. Now we see that God scared them, and it was a test, for them not to sin and listen to Moses. Still the Ten Commandments, express God unchanging standards, for moral living, for today. Now He made this Ten Commandments, for the Israelites, but also for us today, for us. That's why I said the Bible is our guideline. They made a lot of mistakes in the Bible, but it's our guideline not to make the same mistakes they made. It's a living guideline for us how to live on this earth. He made that for the Israelites how to live in that land, but also it's for us also how to live on earth today. So we'll take a look at all these commandments. He said, honor your mother and your father. That's something you want to do, because if you disrespect your mother and your father, your life will be cut short. And He said, if you honor your mother and father, you will live a long life in this land that I'm giving you. So He give them plenty laws, for how to live, on that land that He given them. And that's for us also today to abide by God's Ten Commandments. He also say no adultery, no false testimony to your neighbors, don't, and to the wife neighbor. It was a whole lot of law, and it was for the Israelites how to live on that land. He don't want them to get all out of control. That's why God said when they get ready into that land, they have to exit everybody out that land, because if they leave somebody in there, they're gonna corrupt them to do evil and wickedness. When God already instruct them His law or how to live on that land, because sometimes you get persuaded by other people, to do wrong and wickedness. That's why God want nobody but only them to live in that land. And when they get ready to possess that land, they're going to leave one group of people in there, and then they're going to try to corrupt them with false gods and all that. That's why God had told them, I need you to get everyone out of this land for you to possess this land. Because you leave one person in there, it's going to corrupt them to do wickedness and sin. And God went through all this trouble to give them law and instruction of how to live on that land. So that's all the word I have for you on today. And I hope y'all have a blessed and safe night. And I'll see you on the next video.